You've been committed to self-improvement, reading, reflecting, trying to communicate better. Yet somehow you feel further away from your partner than ever. It feels like the more you grow, the more they stand still. If this resonates, you're not broken. You are experiencing what I call an insight gap. Today, I'm going to show you 5 strategies to bridge that gap without shrinking yourself to fit their comfort zone. And suggestions 4 and 5 may seem to be in direct conflict with each other. That might leave you with some decisions to make. First, you can ditch the psychobabble and analysis of your partner. We are talking about leaning into a practical psychology approach here. For all the theory I've studied over the years, I take a very no-nonsense approach to couples work. Practical psychology is where we focus less on specialized terminology and more on how the rubber meets the road, those day-to-day choices we lean into to make our lives better. So you may find all this psychology stuff really interesting. Maybe you're motivated when Brene talks about taking your seat at the table. And maybe you've done some serious work with your therapist on setting boundaries and recognizing your trauma triggers. I'm on board. I've done that work myself and definitely use that language when it's appropriate. But here's where we hit that insight gap. If your partner hasn't done that work, you don't just have different insights. You are essentially speaking different languages. If you try to use sophisticated relational jargon with a partner who hasn't stepped into that world, you might as well be lecturing them on theoretical physics or speaking Mandarin. You may have the best of intentions, but if you're trying to initiate a meaningful conversation about helping with the dishes, picking their underwear off the floor, or recognizing that watching game day together doesn't count as foreplay, you have to be strategic. If you wrap a request about doing the dishes in language about respecting boundaries or being seen and heard, you may get eye-rolling instead of the empathy you're hoping for. Try challenging yourself to frame these concepts in everyday language that's meaningful to anyone, regardless of their psychological insights. You're not dumbing it down when you do this. Meeting your partner where they are prioritizes connection and resolution over using language that only has deeper meaning to you. The second strategy is taking care not to diagnose your partner. Too many people out in the public are making the mistake of diagnosing their partners with narcissistic personality disorder, or bipolar disorder, or even ADHD. Save that for the professionals. Maybe you've just read lots of books on psychology and watched all the videos from Dr. Ramani and Jimmy on relationships. It still doesn't mean you're qualified to give a diagnosis. And it definitely doesn't mean doing so is going to lead you anywhere productive. Let's say you diagnose your partner with some disorder. Ethical issues aside, whether you're right or wrong, this becomes a power play. To begin with, these often come in the context of an argument where it's likely to feel retaliatory or weaponized. It comes out as an insult. If your goal is to extend and inflame the argument, that's a pretty good way to do it. But if your goal is to build resolution and connection, this may not be your path. Even if you don't throw your diagnosis out in the context of an argument, it can still come across as a power play. If you're the one who knows what their disorder is and they're not psychologically minded or well-informed, there's high potential for harm. If you're right, you become the expert on their mental health, which doesn't promote equity in the relationship. And right or wrong, it can lead to feelings of insecurity or manipulation, even if that's not your intention. So what can you do instead? Well, you can focus on your experience and not whatever evaluations you have about your partner. Instead of pathologizing their frustrating behaviors, lean into how you feel when those things happen. You may be surprised at how this can begin to promote more empathy and less eye-rolling. Your feelings and needs can't be argued, so that's always a great place to start. If you start a conversation with, "I'm frustrated and worried," it gets things off on a very different footing than, "You're such a mess, you're driving me crazy, you must have ADHD." The first one is your experience and your concern. The second one is an attack. If you have a real concern, your partner may honestly have a mental health issue, and you're genuinely only concerned with their well-being. A qualified mental health professional is the one to assess and diagnose that. You may have the best of intentions, but trying to be the expert on their mental health may not be perceived as helpful or supportive. The third strategy is realize that your personal development makes demands on everyone else. Every relationship has a homeostatic balance. Do you remember studying homeostasis in school, the tendency for systems to self-correct to a state of equilibrium? While most of us learned about this in terms of biology, it absolutely applies to relationships. Every relationship is a system and has a natural balance to it. But your self-improvement changes your place in that system. Whether you're in therapy, learning to set boundaries, or getting fit so you just look better and feel more confident, every development changes you. By default, it changes the relationship. When you learn how to acknowledge your needs, set boundaries, it requires others in your life to figure out how to interact with this newer, more self-assured version of you. Your partner will need to learn what to do with these new boundaries, how to interpret them, and hopefully how to respect them. Even though they may be leaning on old patterns in the relationship, you've moved the bar. You're requiring them to adapt in ways they didn't ask for. Hey friends, if you want to go deeper into some of these topics, and maybe you'd like to find a way to help support my work here on the channel, I've developed a Patreon community, and the link is down below. And so you get two birds for one stone with that. You have a chance to do more deep dives into these concepts that I talk about here on my channel, and you help me prioritize this work and make it easier for me to make more videos. So if you're interested and willing, check out that Patreon link below. I'd love to see you over there. Thanks. Now, let's say you get into terrific shape and you look more attractive and feel more confident. This could have an effect on your partner. While they may be happy and excited for you, they may also need to learn what to do when you get more attention from others. It may require them to check their own boundaries and self-confidence. In the past, maybe they didn't worry about it, but now, what if someone notices you and you notice them back? Does this put the relationship in jeopardy? Whether it does for you or not, it may bring up new insecurities in your partner. Those are their feelings and they are responsible for them. But your actions were the catalyst for this change. None of this needs to be bad or negative for a relationship. Everyone is on a constant journey and we're always making small adaptations. But if you're in a big change season in your life, it can be helpful to remember that none of this happens in a vacuum. Maybe there are opportunities to discuss these changes head on with your partner. If they struggle with change or don't see what's going on, it might take patience and persistence to get to that meaningful dialogue. Just remember that as excited as you are for the new developments in yourself, the others in your life didn't necessarily sign on for these big changes. They may struggle with these at first, so you both may need to strategize about how to deal with new patterns evolving in the relationship. It can happen, but sometimes it needs to be discussed and not ignored. The fourth strategy is to recognize the unresolvable problems in your relationship. It's nice to think that with an amazing partner, you can always resolve your differences and live in harmony, isn't it? Well, most of us realize that happily ever after is the stuff fairy tales are made of, not real life. I'm not being cynical here. I believe in the hope that couples can learn to live in harmony together and spend a lifetime together of relative happiness. But we need to recognize one important fact, and that's that most disagreements have no solution. Noted researcher John Gottman has found that up to 69% of marital disagreements are perpetual. That means there's no resolution to be had. It doesn't exist. This doesn't have to be catastrophic for a relationship. Believe it or not, recognizing this can be a good thing. When we recognize that many of our differences are just part of the territory of being in a relationship, we free ourselves of the unrealistic demand that we don't disagree with our partner. Of course, it needs to be the right 69%. If you can't agree on what respect or fidelity look like, that might be a problem. But if most of the important stuff falls into the resolvable 31%, we can learn to celebrate our positives in our relationship without awfulizing the differences. In terms of your personal development, it's possible this can highlight some of these differences, though. While you may be celebrating the loss of 30 pounds and fitting into clothes you haven't been able to wear in years, your partner may be entrenched in old fitness habits they may never change. You may encourage and request, but in the end, we all have to be responsible for our own actions. In the end, you can't change people. They have to change themselves, or not. So if you're on a personal development journey, that's your journey. Sure, it affects your relationships, we've discussed that. But your partner's willingness to join in or match energy does not change your progress. If they get motivated and lose weight too, that's great. If they don't, your progress still matters. If your personal development seems to highlight or create problems in your relationship, that doesn't have to spell the end of that relationship. Some problems just don't have a solution, but we learn to live with our differences anyway. It's a series of personal choices. Only you can decide what's right for you. And the fifth strategy, be clear about your expectations for the relationship. Now, that thing I just said about most differences being unresolvable, that's absolutely true. Any relationship is going to depend on our ability to choose the person over choosing some perceived idea of perfection. But there's a flip side to this, and that's being clear about our expectations in our relationships. As we develop deeper personal insight, we also begin to interrogate our past decisions, what we've done and failed to do, and what we've accepted from others in our lives, for better or worse. The personal development journey doesn't just move the needle for others in our lives, it moves it for us too. As we develop a deeper personal understanding, we may be faced with some hard decisions about what we're willing to accept or not moving forward. We learn to see ways we've been manipulated or not supported, and we develop new expectations for who gets to be in our lives. Maybe your list of deal breakers changes. I know mine did, and it definitely had an effect on who got to stay in my life and who didn't, romantically and otherwise. If you're going to communicate your needs to your partner in a way they can hear and respond to, you'll need to get clear on your expectations in the first place. Now, you may be surprised at how people show up for you in new ways when you actually articulate those needs and expectations to them. Again, it doesn't have to be a negative. As you improve yourself, you become aware of what's possible. Others may not be on your schedule, but you can give them a chance to at least get in the same boat and start rowing the same direction. If you can't articulate what you want or need, it's impossible for others in your life to meet those needs. The opposite is also true. So you have an opportunity to celebrate all your hard work by helping others understand just how important this is to you. When you do that, you might just get what you want, a partner who shows up in new and supportive ways. Friends, if you found this helpful, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go deeper into relationship discussions and help support my work here on YouTube, check out the Patreon link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, be well.